So have you ever been to Legoland? I know. If you've been, I used to work there. But have you ever been to Legoland? There used to be like Lego 4D, right? So you would see the image in 3D, but then 4D, your seat would vibrate. It would do different things. Like it felt like you were actually in the movie. Well, hello there and welcome back to a brand new video where today is a very exciting day. Today we're talking about the PlayStation 5. Yes, we spoke about the PlayStation 5 probably a few months ago. I think back in April we last spoke about the PlayStation 5. We got some pretty cool information. And then Sony the other week, I've been really, but not bad, but I've been so busy with other videos. I haven't really had the chance to do this one. And you know me, I like talking about consoles and I thought, hey, even though it's a week old, I still wanted to talk about it. Still provide my first impressions and just general chit chat about the PlayStation 5. Today's video, we're going to be talking about obviously like the release date. So there's now a release date. Well, not a confirmed release date, but a rough time frame. We have some information on the new controller, which is obviously the Dualshock 5, which is very exciting. We also have some specs as well as some more detailed specs. Obviously back in April, we kind of got like the rough specs, but now we kind of have a bit more specs, which is exciting. And yeah, just kind of a bit of a chit chat really. We're talking about the PlayStation 5, my thoughts. Am I going to get one? Obviously, I'm probably going to get one. I wouldn't, obviously, it would be a surprise if I didn't buy one. But no, I thought we'd just have a little chit chat talking about the PlayStation 5. And is it a British thing or an English thing to go, do you want a chit chat? Hello, mate, you want a chit chat? Does anyone else say chit chat? I don't know. But if you do enjoy today's video, then be sure to hit a massive thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, comment down below your thoughts regarding this. So right, the PlayStation 5. So back in April this year, Sony announced the PlayStation 5 and that later on in the year they'll provide us more information, and that time is now, which is very exciting. The release date, let's begin with the release date. Well, we're looking at holiday 2020. So probably November next year, December time. Kind of makes sense. Q4, they probably want to set it for Christmas. I think the PS4 came out in November. Was it around that time? I remember it coming out, obviously it came out in 2013. And it came out, I think, around when Call of Duty was coming out. So I think it came out in 2013, roughly November time. And we're imagining that the Xbox will also come out. So it'll be a very expensive year. Next year, when I buy both consoles, it will be very expensive. But that is the rough release date. So something new to talk about is the controller. Yes, so Sony have actually announced what the controller will do, what's different, and it's quite not rare, but obviously the main focus point whenever a new console comes out is the console. It's not the controller, it's the console. But Sony are very focusing on this controller. So they spoke about what it does. They've replaced rumble with some other type of vibration feedback, and it's like next generation controller in terms of vibration, the way it feels. So it's pretty interesting. So there'll be a new PS5 controller. It will use USB Type-C, so a new connection. The PS5 controller has haptic feedback, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but basically it's replacing the rumble. Instead of having a default vibration, so if you crash into like a wall or whatever and it goes zzz, that's my impression of a vibration. You know, it's just generic, right? If you're playing Call of Duty, you're playing FIFA, you're playing Forza, obviously not on the PlayStation, but a racing game or whatever. When you hit something or you do something and the controller vibrates, it's the same vibration across the board. But this time around, the controller knows what type of vibration to use at certain different points. So I'll talk about that more in a moment. The controller now has adaptive triggers, which is exciting, kind of a bit like Scuff. So the triggers are now adaptive, which is interesting. New speaker system on the controller. So obviously the speaker system was brand new to the PS4. So yeah, they're just basically just updating the speaker system on the Dualshock 5 controller. Better battery life, of course, that's obviously the norm these days. It's slightly heavier than the Dualshock 4 controller, and I have my Dualshock 4 controller here, but I also have a white one over there, which I need to unbox. I don't know if you guys can see it, probably just there. Just there, next to Snorlax. But yeah, so apparently it's slightly heavier than the Dualshock 4 controller, but will be lighter than an Xbox One controller. So that will be interesting. Now, talking about the controller in depth in terms of this new haptic feedback system. So the controller will provide different feedback in terms of vibration when you do something in the game. So if you were to crash into a wall, it would feel much different than making a tackle, say in FIFA or on a football field. So they're giving you like a different feel to the game. It's kind of like 4D, right? 4D. So have you ever been to Legoland? I know. I used to work there, but have you ever been to Legoland? There used to be like Lego 4D, right? So you would see the image in 3D, but then 4D, your seat would vibrate, it would do different things, like it felt like you were actually in the movie. So is the controller going to be like its own, like, I mean, obviously not going to play in 3D, but it's like a 4D where the controller will have different vibrations. So they've said here, right, if you're like walking through mud or grass, the controller will vibrate differently, which I guess it kind of makes sense. So I guess that is exciting, but I don't really play with vibration sometimes. I play with it sometimes, but if I'm shooting, it kind of like puts my aim off a bit. So, I don't know, like, is it for me? Maybe, it'd be something good to try out, but that's kind of like their main high point, their main selling point for the PS5 is this new controller, which does more than just a controller. It does many, many things, which is very exciting. Now, talking about the console, so we're going to be talking about the specs here, so obviously we have already spoken about the specs in a previous video, but just to give a recap, I was just going to do a video talking about the new controller, but I thought, hey, why not do an updated PS5 video? So if you are new around here, you're getting pretty much all the information in one video. So to begin with, the CPU, the processor. So the PS5 CPU will be an AMD chip based on Ryzen 8 cores, and it's the 7nm Zen 2, so an 8-core processor. Pretty much I think it's an 8-core processor in the PS4 already. So talking about the GPU, the PS5 GPU will be a custom AMD Navi GPU that supports ray tracing at a hardware level. So obviously it's very, like, more improved graphics and all that fun stuff. Now the audio, so the PS5 will have 3D audio that Mark Kearney believes will be dramatically different to the PS4 audio. Storage, as with the new Xbox, the PS5 will have an SSD, so obviously a solid state drive, which at the moment I think most PS4 should have the standard hard drive. Some people have upgraded their hard drive to an SSD, which is obviously exciting. I think at the moment it just uses a 2.5-inch hard drive, so you can obviously put a 2.5-inch SSD, which some people do, faster boot up times. But the PS5 comes with this by default, but it's not just a normal SSD, it's actually one of the new SSDs which has just come out, which is the PCIe 4 connection, which honestly is just faster than a normal SSD. So if you have an SSD right now, like in my like for example, in my PC boots up in about 6-7 seconds. But if I were to install a PCIe 4.0 SSD, PC would flow like that. Like, that's how fast it is. And if you remember from like a presentation, Kearney gave an example, right? So when he was loading Marvel's Spider-Man on the PS4, it took 15 seconds to load up. On the PS5, it took 0.8 of a second. That is how fast this PS5 is going to be, especially for boot time. So yeah, this PS5 sounds expensive. I mean, I have no idea on the price yet, but you know, it does sound impressive at the same time. So talking about resolution, so the PS5 will support up to 8K, so most likely it will do upscaling to 8K, but it will do a native 4K. The PS5 will have a 4K Blu-ray drive, which is exciting. This is very cool because obviously discs are getting bigger, and apparently the PS5 will read up to 100 gigabytes on an optical disc, which is huge. That's a huge amount of data. Now moving on to the final few things, and you guys probably know this already, but the PS5 will support backwards compatibility, mainly with the PS4 games, potentially could be with PS3 games. I mean, obviously on the PS4 at the moment, you can play PS3 and PS2 games. Some of them are digital, so that's pretty exciting. And that's something I currently use on my PS4, so having backwards compatibility on the PS5, I'm looking forward for. Like, that's something which is, I think backwards compatibility, like back in the day, wasn't really a big thing, but now people like playing their classic games or just remastered games in general. So I think, you know, compatibility, you know, is a huge thing now. I mean, the final few things, which is probably like I've never really seen before. It might be available on PC, but when players now install a game, they now have the option to install certain parts of the game. So if you want to install the campaign only, install the campaign only. If you want to install multiplayer only and not campaign, you just install multiplayer. Obviously at the moment you pick the disc in and it will just install everything at once. But if you want to, let's say, uninstall, okay, for example, let's say you're playing the new Call of Duty coming out this week and you put the disc in and you install campaign and multiplayer and like Spec Ops, for example, and let's say you complete campaign, I want to uninstall it because it might be 20 gig, 30 gig. So that's interesting because you can still have the game, but just uninstall it for the campaign, which is awesome. And then finally, the PS5 will have a revamped UI. So the X and B, obviously our operating system, changed slightly. But yeah, that's pretty much the PS5. You know, we spoke about the new controller. We spoke about the graphics cards, the processors, the SSD, the backwards compatibility, the 8K support, and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Hopefully we find a price relatively soon, I guess. Probably going to be around that £400 to £450 mark, potentially, maybe. It does sound expensive. What are your thoughts? But anyway, if you have enjoyed today's video, then be sure to massive thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, comment down below your thoughts regarding this. But anyway, guys, have a wonderful day, and as always, in my next video, Adios, chaps. Boom.
And although it's not enough.